I'm Alan Dyson. I'm Professor of Education in the School of Education at Manchester University, and I also co-direct something called the Centre for Equity in Education. The Centre for Equity in Education really does what it says on the tin. In other words, it explores issues around equity and inequity in education. Within that, it has a particular emphasis on the relationship between social disadvantage and educational disadvantage. The reason for that is that in all countries, but very markedly in England, there's a powerful relationship between social and educational disadvantage, and learners' social background tells you a lot about where they're likely to end up educationally, and so what the life chances are likely to be. Since the Centre's interested in this issue of equity and in the relationship between social and educational disadvantage, we also in practice tend to be interested in what we call urban contexts generally. These issues of inequity have a particular flavour in urban contexts generally and in city contexts particularly, and that's something to do with the social polarisation that you tend to get in cities, something to do with the way that the economy of cities drives that social polarisation, and then the consequences of that for education systems that somehow have to deal with these inequities and inequalities. And that's made even more complex because in urban contexts, schools in particular are tightly packed together. And given the policy framework that we have currently in this country, that means that schools are competing against each other for the same students. Education is very much an applied field, and our concern really is to say, well, what can be done about these issues? So when we're looking at these foundational disciplines, we're always looking at what their applied implications might be. Now that then gives you a clue as to how we spend our time. Because from our point of view, it's not enough simply to do scholarly research that sits on library shelves. We have to actually get out there in the field. We have to try and understand the issues that practitioners in the field are facing, and we have to find whether there are better solutions than they're currently using. So a lot of the work we do actually takes us out working with people in local authorities and working with people in schools. We tend to form relationships with particular schools, and especially with schools that are facing really quite difficult situations. We tend to try to work with the teachers and the professionals in those schools to understand from them how they see the situation that they're facing, what they're trying to do to tackle the problems in that situation, and then to try and help them think through what those problems are and what might be good solutions to those problems.